We begin this morning with the latest from Ukraine. We'll start off with a front lines report from Holly Williams outside Kyiv. And then Margaret Brennan puts things in perspective.
Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, is now a war zone. Russia claims it isn't targeting civilians, but Ukraine says its forces are firing indiscriminately, including on this apartment building. Nearby, as we visited a hospital, the battle came close to us.
We're hearing a lot of gunfire, obviously fighting taking place. We think about 3 blocks from here.
This private facility has cancelled all elective surgeries. Instead, Dr. Elizaveta Plechista told us they're preparing to treat combat injuries.
Why are you staying? You could leave.
It's my home. I'm at my own country. I was here and I will live here for all my time, for all my life.
Even if that means dying here?
If it means fighting for my home.
Ukraine's resistance is determined and may have taken Moscow by surprise. Volunteers are taking up arms. The government's urged them to make Molotov cocktails. Ukraine claims it's killed or injured more than 3,000 Russian troops and captured around 200, though we can't confirm those numbers. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is sharing videos to reassure his people he's still in the country. He reportedly turned down a US offer to help him evacuate, saying, "I need ammunition, not a ride." Other videos show Ukrainians accosting Russian soldiers. "Take these seeds," spits this woman at a soldier, "so flowers will grow when you die here." Russia's President Vladimir Putin claims he launched this bloody war to stop genocide in Ukraine, but there's no evidence of that, and he's been met with condemnation and revulsion, including in Russia itself, where crowds have risked arrest to protest against the invasion.
I'm sorry, so shocked. I just can't help crying.
The United Nations says more than 150,000 have already fled across Ukraine's borders, with lines stretching for miles. Just months ago, Ukraine celebrated 30 years of independence from the Soviet Union. Now this young democracy is fighting for its very existence.
This is Margaret Brennan in Washington. It took the might of the Russian military descending on a European capital to convince continental leaders and the United States to freeze Vladimir Putin's personal bank accounts and harshly sanction Russia.
You can veto this resolution, but you cannot veto our voices.
But all of the moral outrage and a UN condemnation vetoed Friday by Russia show that the global response failed those in the line of fire.
Last night was the most horrific for Kyiv since, just imagine, 1941.
President Biden won't send U.S. troops, but he did send more than $1 billion in security assistance, including body armor, anti-tank weapons, and munitions for Ukraine to defend itself. Since it is not a NATO member, Ukraine stands alone against one of the world's biggest militaries. An invader that doesn't recognize rules of engagement, whose leader does not seem to care about public sentiment at home or abroad. Therein lies the dilemma for diplomats. How to persuade a man who now prompts comparisons to history's most infamous dictator to abide within a world order he has set out to destroy.
But I think we have lost the will to defend it.
Former U.S. envoy to Ukraine, Ambassador Kurt Volker.
We've drawn a bright line to defend our NATO allies, but by drawing such a bright line, we are leaving Ukraine and others out in the cold. It is ending the kind of world that we thought we were living in.
Is the bottom line that might actually does make right?
That is what Putin is trying to demonstrate.
The U.S. and its allies plan to bar some Russian banks from the SWIFT international payment system and tie the hands of its central bank, moves that may disrupt global markets. Even President Biden acknowledged the limits of his strategy.
No one expected the sanctions to prevent anything from happening.
And then there is China, which noticeably abstained from condemning Russia's aggression. It's unclear whether Western isolation of Moscow could bring it closer to Beijing, or whether Putin's appetite for risk will drive a wedge into their budding alliance. As Europe faces the most brutal conflict on the continent since World War II, it is clear the impact from Vladimir Putin's war will not be contained within Ukraine's borders.
Our allies will not be safe as long as you have a dictator on the prowl. Diplomacy only makes sense when you have force underneath it. When you have a balance of forces, you have strength, then both sides have a reason to settle. But when it is one side imposing its will by force, diplomacy is really capitulation.